Americans for Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida FAIRtax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, April 22nd, 2022. A theoretical note on tax evasion, the case of the American FAIRtax plan. That's the title of an article published in Scientific Research Publishing. The authors are Dr. James Barth, Dr. Yinan Ni, and Dr. Richard Sebula. Now, Dr. Sebula is the author of Estimated Future Tax Evasion Under the Income Tax System and Prospects for Tax Evasion Under the FAIRtax, New Perspectives. That study accurately calculated the level of current tax evasion and the projected rate of growth. His conclusions were in stark contrast to the official IRS position at the time, but they've now been acknowledged as true by the IRS. Now here's a summary of that article. An issue that always arises with any tax system is the incentive of individuals to evade that tax, whether it's an income tax or a sales tax. Therefore, it's important to consider the extent to which a new sales tax system would be preferable to an income tax system to reduce the incentive and ability of individuals to engage in tax evasion. Any effort to evade a fair tax arguably involves at least 4 types of transactions costs. First, an individual will have to spend time, energy, and possibly some money to find an accomplice employed by a retail store who would be willing to help him or her evade the fair tax. Second, an individual considering evading the fair tax may also recognize that if successful, such an action is not only illegal but immoral and unethical. An individual could therefore incur psychological transactions costs in the form of a conscience cost. Third, if successful in finding a colluder in a tax evasion scheme, an individual would be exposed to potential penalties imposed by the audit-equipped tax collection authority. This would range from a fine to a fine plus imprisonment should the tax evasion somehow be discovered. And fourth, suppose that an individual can recruit an accomplice. Now, an accomplice isn't going to expose him or herself to being prosecuted for tax evasion for nothing. The evader will have to pay the accomplice something. Now, such a payment could be denoted as a bribe, and it will have to be big enough to offset a would-be collaborator's perception of the risk involved in participating in an illegal venture. The fair tax will be collected by the 45 states and the District of Columbia, accounting for 98% of total U.S. population. Nearly all transactions in retail stores involving new goods and services will be recorded at the state level and subsequently reported to existing state sales tax authorities. These records provide formal data on transaction and the fair tax payments due, along with state and local sales tax payments due. It's expected that state and national sales tax collection will be combined on a single report because the state sales tax agencies will be administering the fair tax. The State of California Board of Equalization has found that sales tax evasion to be minimal and that more than 98% of California businesses are operating within the correct legal taxation parameters. Of the sales and use tax revenue, 93% of it comes from voluntary compliance, 2% from compliance activities such as audits and collections, and 5% goes unreported and/or unpaid. In conclusion, there's a growing recognition among economists that don't rely on the present income payroll tax system for their income and their jobs that there's a much better alternative than the income payroll tax system. The 3 economists who prepared this new study were just looking at the best system to fund the federal government. They were not trying to promote a social agenda. They were not trying to promote either a conservative or a liberal political agenda, and were not really trying to attack the income payroll tax. Now, they didn't explain how the present income payroll tax system harms the American economy and costs U.S. jobs. Now, they could have, but that really was not their purpose. Of course, the D.C. elites and their minions in Congress are not idiots, even though sometimes we have to wonder. They totally understand all of the economic problems created by the income payroll tax system, and they're also all familiar with how the fair tax will solve most of these problems. They realize that the fair tax will be much harder to evade than the present income payroll tax for the reasons the 3 economists point out. Yet they persist in doing all they can to prop up a corrupt and failing system. If they really believed, as many say, that the purpose of any tax collection system is to fund the federal government with the least harm to the citizens, they would immediately demand the fair tax. However, the obvious real agenda of the D.C. elites and their minions in Congress is to use the present income payroll tax system for their benefit, not ours. Now, the fair tax eliminates the ability to sell tax benefits to the highest bidder. It also eliminates the ability to enrich tax lobbyists, who will in turn make generous donations to the politicians. It eliminates the need for us to ever again file any type of report showing our business or personal income. It eliminates the uncertainty that an ever-changing tax code presents to businesses that are trying to do effective long-range planning. It eliminates the need for any of us to make payments to tax advisors, the need for the government to snoop in our financial dealings, and it also eliminates the ability to change the tax rules to punish anyone or any group with whom the D.C. elite and their minions in Congress disagree. The income payroll tax system is broken. It's no longer working. We can't repair it, but we can replace it with the fair tax. So join us and take back control of our country, not with bullets, but with the elimination of one of the biggest threats to our liberty and economic prosperity, the income payroll tax. We should all remember Edmund Burke's warning that applies to our efforts to take back control. Nobody made a greater mistake than he who did nothing because he could only do a little. We should also remember this quote from George Orwell's 1984, which, if we do nothing, may foretell your and your children's future. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. So what can each of us do? We can write letters and make calls to our elected representatives and attend Zoom town hall meetings demanding that if they really want to allow Americans to take back control, the first step is to eliminate the income payroll tax system and enact the fair tax. Take back control. Help us pass the fair tax. The IRS will be gone and we'll pay our taxes when we make purchases. We, not the ruling class and their minions in D.C., will decide how much federal tax we pay, and we'll know how much tax we're paying because taxes will no longer be hidden from us. It will be clearly shown on every retail receipt. So, if you have friends who don't know about the fair tax, send them to FAIRtax.org. Have them watch the whiteboards under how it works, and if they agree, ask them to please join us. Then, contact your members of Congress and the President and demand that Congress pass the fair tax, the only truly fair tax.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax, and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at FAIRtax.org.